Prabhupada ki jai. So I didn't have things properly set up, and we're starting again. So I just need to know that you can hear me. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Please let me know that you can hear me. We're waiting for everyone to come back. Yeah. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. There's sound now. Okay, so why don't we just have kirtan while we're waiting for everybody? And then I will tell you what I was explaining before, which you didn't hear what I was saying. I will tell you. I have to put on my headphones. Krishna. Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Jasodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Jasodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Jasodanandanam Brajajana Ranjana Jasodanandanam Brajajana Ranjana Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Vijana Vallabha Girivara Hari Vijana Vallabha Girivara Sodhanandana Braja Janaranjana Sodhanandana Braja Janaranjana Sodhanandana Braja Janaranjana Sodhanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamana Tira Vanachari Jamana Tira Vanachari Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Sisi Radha Madhava Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Go Premanande Hari Hari Bo. So now I'm going to tell you what I was telling you that you couldn't hear before. Actually, it was all planned that I would be talking and you wouldn't hear anything because you're thinking, I want to hear what he's saying. I want to hear what he's saying. I'm so anxious to hear what he's saying, and I can't hear what he's saying. So now I'm going to tell you what I was saying. So actually, it wasn't planned, but we will use it. We will use it because it works to create suspense. So we're going to be doing a course, and the course is on coping, resilience, being steady in spite of everything that's being thrown at us by the world. And so the title of the course is something like, let me tell you exactly what it is. It's going to be called something like Discovering Your Resilience. And so I was talking about resilience and talking about things related to it. And at the end, I was thinking, it's so interesting because every quality that Krishna says a pure devotee has, he's also saying we need to have. And then you're thinking, well, how can I have this quality? It's the quality of a pure devotee. And Krishna means, no, it's not that you can just have the quality, but Krishna means you have to practice living that quality. So anytime you read something that you think, oh, this is like impossible, I can't do this. This is only a pure devotee can do this. Then you have to think, well, what does it mean to practice that? What would that look like if I was practicing trying to be that way? So in this case, what does resilience look like in practice? Well, in practice, it looks like figuring out how I'm going to exist in the world, but not be so affected by it. So how am I going to be able to deal with everything and people I don't like and situations I don't like, and not be going up and down like a yo-yo through all of that, through all the stuff that's being thrown at me? How can I wear my raincoat so I don't get wet, so I can remain steady, optimistic, enthusiastic in my Krishna consciousness? And how can I act out those qualities long before I have them? Or maybe I have them slightly, but not fully. Because otherwise we think, well, I can't live that way because I don't have those qualities. But the actual fact is, anytime Krishna is describing the good qualities of a devotee, you'll always find some reference somewhere of how to practice those or how we're supposed to have those qualities. Correct? Correct. So Now, when you hear, or you hear a story of a devotee exhibiting some quality that you think is so divinely transcendental you could never do that, then you stop and think, okay, maybe I can't do it like he does it, but I'm supposed to practice it. So what would that practice look like? How would it look like for me if I'm doing that? It's like you hear a story like Thakur Haridas being beaten to death, and he's forgiving and he's praying for these people, and you're thinking, I could never do that. But that's what we're supposed to practice. So you think, okay, there's this devotee who's turned against me, or he's criticizing me. So I'm going to pray for him. I'm going to pray that Krishna blesses him. So then you might say, I don't really feel it, but I'm going to do it because then I will be following in the footsteps of Thakur Haridas in practice. So in this way, you can look at the pure devotee and you can think, well, how could I practice that? What could I do that's similar? Could I pray for somebody that I don't like? Maybe there's, a public figure you don't like because they're doing things which are destructive to the planet, or you believe their business is corrupt, etc., or they're lying to the public. Okay, you can pray, Krishna bless this person. You can pray in some way like that. Okay, so that would be a practice. Even if you don't want to do it, but you practice it. So that's the idea. And then you can go down the list of the 26 qualities of a devotee, and you can think, well, how would I practice those qualities? Especially in situations where I don't feel like practicing them. I feel like actually just being the opposite. Like we often talk about that story of Thakur Haridas, and we say, well, what would you be feeling if you were being beaten to death? And we admit that probably all of us, if not most of us, all of us, would be thinking, if I live through this, I'm going to kill you. Or if I live through this, I'm going to get someone to kill you. That's how most people would think. At least most men. I don't know how women would think. Maybe the same, but men are aggressive. So you always want to get back at somebody. That's natural fallen human instinct, is to get back at somebody. And so now, instead of thinking that way, we think, okay, I'm supposed to practice. I'm supposed to follow in the footsteps of Thakur Haridas. So then I think, okay, well, what would be a practice? What would be a practice in this situation? All right. A good practice would be, let me pray for this person. Okay, I'm not going to kill you. I will pray for you. I don't feel like praying for you, but I know it's the right thing to do. It'll be good for me. It'll be good for you. So that's what we do. So that was my realization this morning by writing that ad. And I've talked about this, but it just kind of hit me in a different way. That everything, every quality the pure devotee has, we can't write it off and say, well, they're pure devotees, of course they have those qualities, but me, what do you expect from me? I'm just a fallen, conditioned, lowly, rascal-like soul. Can't expect me to be like that. No, we don't expect ourselves to be that way, but we expect ourselves to act that way, even if we're not that way. Before we're like that way, we're expected to act that way. And so what's the philosophy behind acting that way? The philosophy is that if I act that way, I become that way. And so that's where it starts. Long before I'm humble, I have to act. I have to find the actions of a humble person, and then I have to act that way. So I will go to you and say, Prabhu, I know I may have offended you. I'm sorry. If I've offended you, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. You don't want to say that. Maybe you don't feel that way, but that's the action of a humble person, and I should be humble, so I do it. Somebody does something wrong, and you feel like criticizing them, but you don't, because you want to act like a humble person. Trinadapi sunichena. Amanina banadena, giving all respects to others. So if I'm going to give all respects to others, I'm not going to criticize. So I feel like criticizing, but I'm not going to do it because I'm trying to practice humility. I don't mean if someone does something wrong that needs to be rectified, because I don't call that criticism. Because a lot of devotees say, but what if they do something wrong and it's hurting other devotees? That's not criticism. That's just rectifying a situation. It's calling a spade a spade. It sometimes has to be done. And as we've said, there's an etiquette to doing that. But that's another topic. But you understand what I'm saying? Maybe I don't feel like it, but I will say I'm not going to criticize. I would love to criticize this person because they are so criticizable. You know those people? You know those devotees? They're like so criticizable. I mean, they just give you so many things you could criticize them for. They're like walking billboards of faults. You know those devotees or those people? You could actually spend a life of Brahma criticizing them because they have so many things to criticize. They have so many faults. It's like endless. And if you like criticizing, these kinds of people are like, they're like your sweets. They're like your dessert. It's just like, you can really get off on it. But because you're practicing humility, you don't do it, even though you feel like doing it. That's the idea. So all these qualities of the pure devotees, when you read about them in Prabhupada's books, don't think, I could never be like them, but rather think, I can practice. I must. I should. I am supposed to. I am supposed to. And then you think, okay, as I go down the list of qualities, you think, all right, well, what is it? What's it going to look like for me to practice this? And then some devotee does something that's really upsetting to you. If I were not a devotee, Prabhu, I would strangle you. And so you think, okay, that's what I feel like doing. That's the how do you feel right now? Someone said this to you. How do you feel right now? I feel like I'd like to strangle him. That's the emotion you're feeling. And you go up to that Prabhu and say, Prabhu, can I give you a massage? I just want to serve you. So you may not exactly say that, but you get the idea. So you're taking how you feel and you're not acting on it, and you're thinking, okay, what is the proper action? And then you think, okay, so this is how I feel. I've just been really, really hurt, and I feel like if I could, I actually feel like getting back at this person, or I feel like isolating. I never want to see them again. I don't want to think about them, or thinking about them is just disturbing me, or the whole situation is disturbing me. And then I think, okay, what would be the action of humility, or what would be the action of tolerance, or what would it be the action of respect? And so then I look at that and I think, okay, I could do this. Then we do it. Don't feel like it, but I'm going to do it. And when you do it, you get purified. So that's the idea. That's what I was thinking this morning. And now you know what I think about. At least you know what I was thinking this morning. Hare Krishna. So we are now going to read from where we left off. Oh, we have a comment. We have a problem. Jyotirmaya is going to tell us the problem. I thought there were no problems in Krishna consciousness, Jyotirmaya. But Jyotirmaya is going to tell us there's a problem. And she's going to say, no, there's no problem in Krishna consciousness. There's a problem when you're not Krishna conscious. That's the problem. In Krishna consciousness, there are no problems. In ISKCON, are there problems? Yes, there are a few here and there. You've seen a few here and there. And a few more here and there. And so the problem is there are no problems in Krishna consciousness. The problem is there are problems when there's lack of Krishna consciousness. Okay, so we're going to find out a problem. The problem is that there are devotees that are convinced to be perfect and act the exact opposite of what they say they are. And when you talk to them, kindly explaining what you see they're doing, they get offended. Well, maybe you have to learn, and maybe you shouldn't tell them, or maybe there's another way to tell them, or maybe there's another person to tell them. And in the ultimate resort, Jyotirmaya, a lot of us who've been around the block a few times and seen a lot of those Prabhus, and some of them happen to be in charge of everything, which makes it worse. If they're just a Prabhu just walking down the street, kind of just being the way they are, doesn't affect that many devotees. But when that Prabhu becomes a leader, it affects more people. So we've seen Prabhus that were doing things that were negatively affecting other devotees. Those Prabhus were leaders, and we couldn't say anything. And we didn't know what to do because we tried to say, and we were silenced. They didn't want to hear it. They didn't want to admit it. And then we thought, well, Krishna is God after all, and if he doesn't like it, he'll reveal to them that they're doing something wrong. And in many, many cases, it happened that Krishna, finally they realized that nobody could tell them. But in their own sincerity of bhakti, or their experiences, which became catalysts for that sincerity to manifest, they understood that what they had done, they apologized, and so forth. In fact, one of those leaders, sometimes when he would go to Rath Yatra, he'd look at someone and he would say, "Do I know you?" Because a lot of the people he hadn't seen in 20, 30 years, he said, "Do I know you? Do you know me?" And they'd say, "Yes, I know you." And then he would say, if you know me, I probably offended you, because I offended so many devotees. And if I did, please forgive me. But that's what he was doing. Like with everyone he'd meet, he'd say, "You know me? I must have offended you." That was a lot different than he was before. But so sometimes that happens. And then there's another thing that happens. Sometimes if that person is harming other devotees, sometimes Krishna will remove them from the association so they stop harming other devotees. So we've seen that also. Krishna pulls them out of their position. They can't maintain it. They lose their strength. So that can happen. And for some devotees, they give up their practice of devotional service. So then you no longer see them anymore. So they're not a problem. So sometimes we just have to, take the position that maybe there's nothing we can do, and leave it up to Krishna in his own time and his own way to deal with it. We had a godbrother like this. He had been in a very powerful position, and then he had become weak in his spiritual practice, and he couldn't maintain that position. But something interesting happened. In spite of that, he never really confronted the Vaishnava community to ever admit that really he did anything wrong. And after he had left the Vaishnava community, it was on the periphery. He wasn't really part of our movement anymore. But sometimes he would make comments about the movement and what was going on and how to fix it and so forth. And we all were kind of amazed that even though he had fallen from his exalted position, not just walked out and said, "I can't do it," but actually fallen into some, how should we say it? Non-regulative principle activities. Yeah, we'll call it. He had fallen into non-regulative principle activities. You could imagine which one, right? Well, there's only one or two that ex-hippies fall back into, as you can imagine. So I was discussing this with another godbrother that had worked with him, that knew him well. And I forget what we were discussing, but something along the line that we thought it was a little bit amazing, well, at least interesting, but a little bit amazing, that he never really came out and said, admitted his mistake, but he always kind of had a position which was a little bit like, nothing happened, and I'm still the great person I always was. And this godbrother said, I don't think in this lifetime he's ever going to understand. So that's also possible. And Jyotirmai, we just have to say, Hare Krishna. So everyone is advancing at their own speed. That was the conclusion of my godbrother. He said, I don't think he's going to understand in this life. It's going to take more experiences before he understands that he's not as great as he may think he is. So that's just, life. So sometimes we have to, leave things in Krishna's hands. Sometimes we can't do anything. And I was reading an article yesterday. What was it about? Oh, yeah. I read this article. I'm assuming it's true. I think we may have experience of this. He said some people by nature do not have the ability to introspect. Honestly, they can't honestly see where they're at. They just, he said it's not their fault. It's like a genetic thing, or the nature of their brain, or personality, or DNA, or blood type, or something that they cannot see themselves. They just can't. They can't honestly look at themselves. It's not possible. And there may be other reasons. Someone may be very arrogant, so they can't do that. But in this article, he wasn't condemning people. He was just saying some people can't do that. They don't have that nature. So, what do you do in that situation? You say, Hare Krishna, and you go on with your Krishna consciousness, and you say, they will understand when they understand. And I may not be the one to help them understand. Even as a spiritual master, I remember I was trying to instruct a Siksha disciple once about something. And she was adamantly fighting everything I was saying because that's her nature. She does that with everybody. And generally, people who do things with everybody who are like very adamant about what they think and what they believe and is super stubborn, and like when they do that with everybody, they also tend to do that with their spiritual master. Although you would think, well, maybe they'll do it with everybody, but they wouldn't do it with their spiritual master. But they even do it with their spiritual master. We've seen some pretty obstinate devotees challenge Prabhupada. We've heard of devotees that challenge Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's preaching and innovations, who are his own disciples. So sometimes people just have a nature, and then they just can't transcend it or purify it, and they use it against their own spiritual master. They end up arguing with their spiritual master. No, it's like this. The Guru says, no, it's like that. No, it's like this. So the conclusion of this discussion, Jyotirmai, is welcome to the material world. Here's your I always picture like a little video, the conditioned soul falls into the material world and he gets a little brochure. Welcome to the material world. This is what it's like down here. You are going to meet people who are obnoxious, and they think they're God, and they think they're God's gift to the universe. And nobody can tell them anything. No matter what they do, they always think it's good and right. And the pamphlet will be called Welcome to the Material World. And you just go down the list of all the crazy things that go on in the material world and no one will admit or acknowledge they're crazy and wrong. So those are our realizations from the battlefield. Yeah, maybe that's be a title of a good article or book. Realizations from the battlefield of life. Those are our realizations for the battlefield of life. And those realizations were gained after lots of pain in watching leaders who were doing things which were upsetting, to put it mildly, their disciples, their godbrothers, and the movement. If I wouldn't put it lightly, I would basically say destroying. That's probably more accurate. Well, somewhere between destroying and upsetting, depending on the person. But and there was nothing we could do about it. So we had to figure, if there's nothing we can do about it, how do we understand it? How do we deal with it so we don't go crazy? And another conclusion we had, which was beautiful, is let's go out and preach, because can't do anything about this. So let's go out and do our service. Of course, we had a problem, is in that volatile situation, we didn't want to bring people to the temple, because it wasn't stable. We weren't happy there, but it was a temporary situation. But that was one of our conclusions. We realized we could potentially be talking about this for a day of Brahma, because it was so disturbing. So we realized we could potentially be talking about this kind of like forever. And we realized, at a certain point, we kind of had to make sense of it for ourselves. And then once we made sense of it and we realized that this is now in Krishna's hands, because there's nothing we can do, then we were okay. Then we just went out and did our seva, preached. We were all preachers. And we were okay with it. And that was our conclusion. I don't know if that helps you or addresses that question, but I just want to let you know, we've been through it, and there are people who do not have the ability to introspect. And they may have the ability later on in life, but this particular article was stating there are certain people who will never. And some people will later on in life as they grow and mature, but some people won't. What to do? Hare Krishna. You like that, don't you? Yeah. Okay. This may be one of those classes where we don't get to read, we just get to discuss. Sometimes we discuss something and it hits a nerve and everybody starts sharing and asking questions. It takes up an hour and a half, and then we're still going after an hour and a half. Okay, this could be one of those discussions. Siddha Yogini says, welcome Siddha Yogini, long time no see. We miss Mayapur, where we used to see you. What about devotees who left Krishna consciousness? And they were angel devotees, but they could not handle rough nature of some devotees around. How to understand that? And some heavy devotees stayed so many years despite hurting others regularly. It's quite confusing. Well, the first thing I like to say about devotees leaving is, and you may have heard this, that Prabhupada said 50%, I mean, you could adjust the percentage according to the situation, so it's a general figure. Prabhupada saying 50% is the fault of ISKCON. And I think this is such an important point, because in my experience of being in ISKCON, I can see that some devotees, they just have trouble being in big organizations. They have trouble for various reasons. I don't want, every reason could be different, but some people, it's difficult to be in a big organization. For other people, it's difficult to be in a religious organization because everything is very rigid and you have to do this. And they see that maybe people aren't being treated so lovingly because they're trying to enforce rules and regulations in it. It's just by their nature, it's really hard for them. And it's not because they're not good devotees or bad devotees. They just, so generally, for such devotees, I would say whether you're in ISKCON officially or not, ISKCON is really where sadhana and seva and preaching is being done, and ISKCON is where, and kirtan and japa and all that, and ISKCON is where you have friends who are devotees. So, the problem is if someone goes away from the association of devotees because ISKCON is whatever, they can't deal with it. Generally, unless they still maintain contact with some devotees they're close with and maintain their sadhana, get inspired by those devotees, attend kirtans, listen to classes, and listen online, they don't do well. None of us will do well, not just they. None of us can do well without association. We absolutely have to have association because on our own, we're conditioned souls. And a conditioned soul, he can't make it on his own. Self-realized soul, they can make it on their own, but even a self-realized soul does not want to be on their own because hearing and speaking about Krishna, discussing Krishna with other devotees is essential, even for elevated, pure devotees, to enhance further their Krishna consciousness. So that's the challenge. And I think it's a reality that we just have to acknowledge and face that some people will not fit well into the broader ISKCON society. Now, what's going on in some places in the world that I've seen is devotees have started programs in the same city as temples. And those kinds of people that maybe don't relate to religious movements and, the very strict religious movement, and everybody's getting initiated and everyone is a Brahmin. So these devotees create programs which are more, you could say, accommodating, and they're not putting so many demands on people, and they feel comfortable and they feel accepted, and they're not being judged because they only chant 4 rounds or whatever you may judge somebody for. And those people do better. And I think those situations, I mean, I would like to see all of this come like that, but it may never be that way because we have standards. And the central part of ISKCON it's all about becoming a Brahmin, getting initiated, and being a pure devotee. But we need, Varnashram. The whole idea of Varnashram is to fit everybody in it. And until we establish Varnashram, at least these other preaching programs that devotees are doing, which are more accommodating, people feel more comfortable. I think for those kinds of people, it's better. And it's just a reality, and it's unfortunate. And can we create an environment within our temples which is more accommodating? Yeah, I think it's a consciousness. I don't think we can create, we're always going to be encouraging people to be pure devotees. The Bhagavatam classes will always encourage that. We'll always be encouraging people to be Brahminical. We'll to follow principles and so forth. But within that, you can create an environment where people don't feel bad if they can't do that. They don't feel ostracized. They don't, and we can create an environment in which the leaders are more accommodating. But you can't control that. So it's unfortunate. It's always unfortunate if somebody who is sincere, but due to their nature can't handle a certain situation, leaves ISKCON, because when they leave, it's really difficult for them. And when you leave the association of devotees, you get influenced by other ideas and other conceptions. And a lot of times when they leave, then they become open to other ideas that are not always healthy. That's what I've seen. So relationships is extremely important if you're a leader. If there's anything you can do in the temples you're in to help create better relationships amongst devotees and leaders, do it. There's a lot of talk amongst the leaders of ISKCON about training leaders. It's so important. And relationships are everything. And sometimes that's not stressed enough. So we need to be talking about it. And maybe Siddha Yogini, the more we talk about it, the more we stress it, the more we can start influencing the culture where we live with the people we can influence, and saying, we want to accomplish so many things, but we really need to take care of the devotees. We really need to focus on relationships that are healthy, so devotees are happy, so they want to stay in ISKCON. And if everybody can't be a pure devotee, let us accept them without judgment, and let us just encourage them to be the best they can in wherever they're at. And so we can at least try to be devotees who can create that culture. That's I think the best we can do. If you have anything else you want to say about that, please say it. Kirti Das says, I had a friend who was severely beaten on a book distribution in a Muslim country by a mob. Whoa. said to me that he was praying to and remembering Haridas Thakur while being beaten. His name was Mukunda Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Wow. Some devotees are amazing, isn't it? They would risk their lives to spread Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness, I was thinking about this yesterday. Like, we did so many things for Prabhupada, which were things like soldiers would do. Like, you sacrifice so much. We sacrificed so much convenience. We sacrificed sometimes when we traveled our health a little bit, because we always couldn't cook, and we just had to eat what we could get. We sacrificed sleep. We did things which were not always healthy or even emotionally healthy, but I'm not saying we should do them, but we did them for the service of Prabhupada, like soldiers would neglect their health or their sanity to their mission. Devotees are amazing. And sometimes we look back at that and we think, that wasn't good, we shouldn't do that. And we can all agree, that's not something we maybe necessarily want to take forward. But there's always going to be a devotee who just wants to go out on the edge and sacrifice. And it's glorious. So, Ajay Nitai says, Bali Maharaj disobeyed his spiritual master's instruction. Yes. A lot of devotees, when they read it, try to be fault finders and judge mental instead of thinking. We cannot imitate a pure devotee. What is your thoughts? Okay, I have to understand your question. Are you saying that a devotee will read that story I'm not sure what you're saying, but I'll talk about the story a little bit and see if I get what you're saying. The story of Bali Maharaj rejecting his spiritual master is important because no one should accept a spiritual master who's not bona fide. And even if your spiritual master is bona fide and you have accepted him, if at some point he becomes like Sukracharya and tells you, do not surrender to Krishna, that's a criterion for rejecting a spiritual master. If ever your spiritual master says you should become a Mayavadi, you should not surrender to Krishna, or he said you should surrender to Lord Shiva, or you should worship Durga, don't worship Krishna. At that point, Shastra says you should reject, not you should, you must reject that spiritual master. So this story serves as some form of criteria for us to understand under what conditions is it allowable to reject one's spiritual master. And so this is an obvious condition. Sukracharya is saying, don't surrender. And Bali Maharaj said, I don't understand. You always told me to surrender to Vishnu. Now you're telling me, don't surrender. And Sukracharya said, but he's going to cheat you. So obviously no bona fide spiritual master would ever say, Krishna's going to cheat you, don't surrender to him. I got a new revelation, I surrender to Krishna and my life is a mess. So I've decided to tell all my disciples, don't surrender to Krishna, you're going to end up like me. My wife left me, my family, my kids hate me, I have no money, I'm begging the government for, give some food stamps and, find a little apartment they'll pay for. Look at how I ended up becoming a devotee. You should not surrender to Krishna. It's the worst thing. Do not surrender to Krishna. If a guru ever says that, immediately, that's it. You reject him. That's what that story is teaching. Story is not, it's not teaching you reject your guru because you think he said something you don't agree with, or that's not what it's saying. Or I think what Ajay Nitai is saying is maybe some people think all the gurus in ISKCON are bogus, so we shouldn't listen to them, just like Bali didn't listen to Sukracharya. I don't doubt there's people who think that way. In fact, we know that's how the Ritviks think. So, of course, everybody's free to think how they want to think, but we learn from Prabhupada how to think. And we learn that we should respect our gurus, that we should have a guru, and we should respect the guru and serve him and hear from him. That's the teaching, that's the culture. Then the question may come up, well, what if your guru, he's bona fide, but sometimes he tells you to do something which you may fear either is not right or it's just unhealthy. Probably the latter is more common, not that it's not right shastrically. Although that could happen, because there are different ways to interpret Shastra. But what he was saying wouldn't be wrong shastrically. It may be an interpretation. But you may feel that it's unhealthy. Then you can talk to your spiritual master and say, I don't think this is good, for whatever reason. Or sometimes you can't talk to him, and you have to decide. If I do this, I don't think it will be good for I know it will not be good for my Krishna consciousness if I do this. And so in the interest of becoming Krishna conscious, which is what my spiritual master wants, I may not do this. There may be some condition like that. Or you have a condition like Prabhupada's condition, which is very interesting, because Prabhupada said, I was married when I got the instruction for my spiritual master to preach, and I couldn't. I had children, I don't know, maybe newly born, one child or two, whatever. And so he was always thinking about doing it, but he couldn't do it. So sometimes it's like that also. You get an instruction from your spiritual master, you can't do it. But you're always thinking, someday I will do it. I want to do it, but I can't do it. That's what Shastra teaches us. So I don't know if that answered your question. And if it didn't answer your question, it wasn't clear, because you said a lot of devotees, when they read it, try to be fault finders and judgmental. I didn't understand what that means. Instead of thinking we can not imitate a pure devotee. I didn't catch I don't understand. And I'm not tired this morning. If I were tired, it would be a good reason not to understand, but I'm not. So if I didn't answer your question or understand it correctly, then you, Ajanitai, can ask again. Krishna Karshani says, what about devotees who pretend to be advanced, but they don't follow the rules, but they want to do services in the temple? That following rules and chanting 16 rounds is required. Should we expose, for lack of a better word, such devotees? Or just leave the situation the way it is? Well, what I've found, this is really, there's two aspects to this question. One is kind of a practical managerial, and one is more of a principle. One thing Prabhupada didn't want us to do was publicly advertise the faults of devotees. So let's say so-and-so Prabhu wants to go on the altar, but it is known by his own admittance, let's say, or he has told other people who have then informed the temple that he's not chanting 16 rounds, or he's not following all the regular principles. And the requirement to go on the altar is to chant 16 rounds, follow the regular principles. And in most temples, it should be that you're a Brahmin. And what kind of Brahmin are you if you're not chanting rounds and following all the principles? So that's one part of the equation, and that part of the equation is, okay, that knowledge has come to the temple president. Now, the wise temple president, following an example Prabhupada gave, would not publicize that information. But what that temple would do, or what I would do if I was in charge of that temple, I would officially create standards of deity worship and publish that in a book, and send that as a digital document to all the devotees who want to do deity worship, along with a testimonial certificate. Please, I need you to certify you're chanting 16 rounds and following the 4 regular principles, something like that. And then if that person certifies it and people tell me that he's not, then I would talk to them and say, we've heard, is this true? So-and-so and so-and-so has said this, because this is required. This is a standard. This is from Prabhupada. GBC has authorized this document. etc., etc. This is the standard. So we're happy to have you worshiping the deity, but we want to ensure that everyone who's worshiping the deity is following these principles. So that's how I would do it. And if that person says, well, I'm not following all the principles now, you say, well, when, after a period of time, if you start following strictly, and then, come to me 3 months after you've been following strictly, just to make sure you can follow, and then we'll talk about it. And people could kind of figure out if someone's not worshiping the deity, it's been restricted. It's probably because now we've passed this, we've handed out these sheets, everyone has to certify. And, but the leader should not publicize that. These are all the attention, attention. These are all the devotees who are not allowed to do deity worship because they're not following the four Vedic principles, and have a big announcement through all the speakers of the temple and put it in every newsletter. And no, that's not what Prabhupada wanted us to do. We want to do it in a loving way. And so this is just a managerial position, a point. But what I have found is that whenever you're dealing with an issue which is difficult, you want to create a policy which is a policy which applies to everyone. You don't want to create a policy which looks like you're just making a policy to deal with this one person who will feel discriminated against. So you want to make a policy based on eternal principles that Prabhupada has taught, which would obviously then apply to everyone, and say, here is the temple policy. This has, been checked with the Minister of Deity Worship, with our GBC, to be correct in what Prabhupada wants. And we, myself as the president, have been ordered, or it's my responsibility, to ensure that this is followed. And if the person doesn't like that, you just have to accept that. He's going to be upset. If other people are upset, what can be done? That's the austerity of managing. But at least if it's a general policy which is meant for everybody, it's much easier to administrate because it's not discriminatory. It's just, this is the standard. Now, as a side point for your information, everyone, back in the day, back in the day is an American statement. I don't know if you understand it. Back in the day, that means in the past. Like in the day when things were different. You say, back in the day. Things were different back in the day. And back in the day, if you were to dress the deities and you didn't have your lotus feet in the temple before 4:29 and 59 seconds for Mangal Artik, forget it, Prabhu. Forget it, Prabhu. That wasn't that strict. You had to be a Mangal Artik. If you weren't a Mangal Artik, they wouldn't let you worship the deity. What to speak of 4 principles and 16 rounds. That was like, duh, of course you have to follow. But if today you're dressing the deities, and you're not a Mangal Artik, your spot has been taken. Now you're thinking, how could they do that? Because in those days, our temples were jam-packed, chock-a-block. We have more devotees. We had devotees lined up around the corner who wanted to worship the deities. We had too many devotees. Like, you hardly got a chance to worship the deity. So if you're supposed to dress a deity and you didn't show up for Mangal Artik, there was a whole line of devotees. I'll do it. Of course, now it's different in most places, but it's just interesting to see. I'm just telling you this because that's what the movement was like after Prabhupada left. That was just, and nobody thought that was fanatical or weird in any way. We just thought that's good, like you can't dress the deities, you don't even come to Mangal Artik. So that's interesting, It's interesting to look at ISKCON back in the day, and because I think a lot of the things back in the day you will think, whoa, you were so strict. But we just thought that's just normal. That's what we're doing. It's not so strict. That's how it is. That's all. So Uh, so we have Billy Lynn Plouffe is back, and she's on fire, and she's going to tell us something. We missed you, Billy. We don't know where you went. We thought you had escaped to Canada or something. That's really funny because after being away for a while and then randomly coming in here, you're talking once again about something relevant to my life. Seems like every time I arrive, it's relevant to my life. I know everything about you, Billy Lynn. I have cameras on you. I know everything. But it's good, spooky coincidence. Well, the thing is, because I've been a devotee a long time, I'm able to speak about things that I commonly see, or I see enough of because it's been 50 years. So in that way, most people, when I speak about things, most people will relate to some of the things I speak about because it relates to them. I was just doing a class, and last Wednesday we did a class for this program we're doing in London, and we were talking about the effects of environment and the effects of association. And in studying the topic of association, there's a few conclusions you get from reading, is that basically you become as the people you associate with, and it's just a reality. We can't avoid that. And that in bhakti, it's pretty much impossible to be doing well in Krishna consciousness if you don't have association, because then you just have your mind to associate with. And if imagine you are surrounded by 20 of your minds, but you have other minds to associate with. And somehow when those two minds come together, the synergy makes them Krishna conscious. So we really need that because we are totally reflecting the nature of the people we're around, both the good and the bad qualities. Rupa Goswami talks about this. Marco sent us a verse, and we always say, associate with devotees because you will pick up on their good qualities. But you also pick up on the bad qualities of people who are lower vibrations, we're just going to say lower vibrations. So you want to be around higher vibrational people and avoid lower vibration, because when you're around the higher vibration, you will pick up on it and you'll go up, and you'll pick up on the lower vibration. It's a reality. We're reflecting association. We're feeling and picking up on the qualities of the people around us. It's amazing because you can use that in your favor, but you have to be careful. You have to be careful about who you get too close with, because the people, they may not be bad people, but you may not want their qualities or their consciousness, and it will affect you. They may be good people, may even be devotees, but they're just in a different state, and it's not your cup. It's not your cup of tea. It's not your cup of tea. So that's interesting. Okay. Okay, so Siddha Yogini is telling us, sometimes it's a big problem. There is not so much devotees on the same place, and in most of the cases we would never meet each other because we are so different. And now we are there, and we cannot choose people according to our nature. Yeah, there's only 3 of us. I don't have much choice. So we associate with whomever we can and feel some kind of affection. Then comes problems. It's not deep enough. There's not proper sincerity, and we feel hurt because sometimes you can feel it when it's not real. Yeah. So, Siddha Yogini, when I first became a devotee, I thought all devotees were like one homogeneous soup. Like every devotee was like the same khichdi. And it seemed like that for a while. I think because we were coming from the same culture, like we were all hippies, love peace and all that. So we're all very similar in that way. But as we grew in Krishna consciousness, we saw that actually we're different. And So Shastra says, and Prabhupada said, it's just natural to be around and close with the people that, be close to the people that you feel closest to or like. And so all I can say is that my bottom line realization of what you're saying is, because I've had to, as we all have to contemplate these things, is that devotees association is very purifying, even with the devotees you don't like, or just say we don't like, we say they're different from us. Not that we don't like them, but they're different from us. We, if when you're not a devotee, you get to choose your friends, right? I like you, I don't like you, and you don't go walk around thinking, oh, I don't like this guy in school. Oh, I'm so offensive. What's wrong with me? You just think, oh, he's like a nerd, and I'm like an athlete, so it's just natural. I wouldn't want to hang out. There's no guilt or shame. It's just normal. But when it's devotees, like, so I'm so bad. I don't, I just don't feel like close with this devotee, and they're always quoting shlokas. Like every third word is a shloka. Does this person, he's like a robot. Does he not know how to be like normal and just have a relationship? Everything he says, he's got a shloka for it. It's driving me crazy. And then we go, oh, I'm so offensive. So that's what happens. But it's just natural. And someone else goes, I love this devotee. He only quotes shlokas. He's like, oh my God, this is like, he's like the person of my dreams. It's just Walker. He's a walking shloka walla. He's a walking shloka machine. I love it. I love it. So it's just natural. The beauty of this is that our Shastra talks about this, that you should, it's called Swajitam, I think it's called. Swajatiya. Bhaktivinoda Thakur talks about it, like your own people, like your own people, yeah. Like I'm from California, I'm from Southern California. So if you're from Southern California, yeah, we can relate. Yeah, you're my man. Something like that. So that's natural. And there's nowhere in Shastra that says it's not natural. But the bottom line is you don't always get that association. So what I've learned is that being with any kind of devotee it's purifying, and it's necessary, and you can benefit from it. And we need that association. And if we can't get the association of the ultimate devotees that we love and want to be close with, we can't avoid that association. We take that association and we try to see what we can appreciate. If nothing else, just appreciate the fact this person's a devotee, and by their association, I will remain in Krishna consciousness. Because, it's like, here's your choice in life. You can associate with 10 people. Here are 10 non-devotees that you really like, and here's 10 devotees you don't like. What are you going to choose? Well, if you're smart, you'll choose the 10 devotees, because if I intimately associate with non-devotees, I'll become like them, and I'll pick up on their habits. I'll probably lose my desire to be Krishna conscious and so forth. So that's how I see it. And pray more devotees, pray for more devotees, or just talk to devotees from around the world that you feel close with, like that. Stay digitally connected, if that's the only connection. I don't know if that helps you or that answers your question, but let me know if I did. Sydney's back and fired up. Back in olden times, back in the day. Okay. Billy Lynn says, is deity worship you're describing different from the deity worship from the people who are sitting in the temple, not actively on the altar? If, for example, someone wasn't chanting 16 rounds, would they be unable to worship while in the temple? No. But if you could say there's two kinds of deity worship. The pujaris who are doing it physically, and the people in the audience who are seeing the deities. And so to go on the altar, one has to be second initiated and following the principles strictly. But to go in the temple, it's open for everyone. And we would say that, in a sense, if you're having difficulty following the principles, it's more of a reason to go to the temple to get purified. But if you are a Brahmin and you're slipping from your Brahminical standards, you have to have those standards to be able to touch the deity, to go on the altar. And so then that's what we were talking about. So we should definitely go to the temple. And the worse off we are, the more we need the temple. Right? That's the idea. Okay. I need to sit up straight, so I have to change this. Hare Krishna. Now I look like I'm 6 feet tall, right? I'm sitting up straight. So I guess I got the answer right for Siddha Yogini. Indulekha. Priya. Is it true that ladies always had their heads covered back in the day? Yeah, it's true. Back in the day. And, well, not in South India. They never cover their head in South India. So I don't think back in the day. But I think the Western women, I can't say because I'm not a woman, like the whole, how it all evolved. But all I can say is, yes, they all had their heads covered. That was just like standard. That was like you wear a sari, your head's covered. And they all had long hair and ponytails. It's kind of, we really, when we became devotees, it was like we were rejecting our culture. So here was a new culture. So we thought like everything about Krishna consciousness and everything Indian was just like, this is what we love, this is what we want. We're kind of like consciously rejecting our culture. So, wearing a sari meant you cover your head. That's like part of what a sari does. And nobody had any problem with it that I was aware of because everybody did it. And I don't know why they stopped doing it. It's not all women don't do it, but a lot of them don't cover their head, and I don't know why. What happened? At what point? Maybe it's a sign that ISKCON is finished because the women don't cover their heads. I don't know. That's an interesting question, and it would be, I think, a good question to ask a senior Prabhupada disciple, like what is going on with head covering and not head covering, and the idea, as far as I understand it, with the burqa also, is that a woman's beautiful hair makes her more beautiful, and her hair is hanging down, and but then women started having bangs and this and that, and then they're covering half their head, so it's like, then I always find it funny that the women wear burqas, the Muslim women wear burqas, but they're wearing Western clothes, tight jeans and stuff. So it's like kind of halfway there, but not fully. So I think cultural changes are there. So like the burqa is sacred, but I guess in Islam the wearing tight clothes was not discussed, so it's not an issue. So this is not a question I could answer. But it's kind of like, shaving your head and for men and covering your head for women. There's not a lot of men with shaved heads and not a lot of women anymore with covered heads. So that's an interesting discussion. Is that a sign that ISKCON is becoming better, or is it a sign ISKCON is becoming worse? Is it a sign things are being watered down, or is it a sign that we're just, being honest about where we're at? It's an interesting discussion. You could argue on both sides of the coin, depending on what side of the coin you started on. Okay. So now, one day I will get to visit the temple. Yes! And you can sit in the temple. And as Prabhupada said, if you're sitting in the temple watching deity worship, that's as good as deity worship. And then Prabhupada one time said, if you're an ant on a flower and they put the flower at Krishna's feet and then you crawl on Krishna's feet, then you're as good as a pujari because you're touching Krishna. And the ant has an advantage. He doesn't have to be, or she doesn't have to be a Brahmin to crawling Krishna's feet. It's okay. Or you can shave your head like Sydney. Then your head's always, but you still have to cover your head then. Well, maybe you don't. If you shave your head, maybe not. Okay, we'll have to debate. I think the point was that Prabhupada he liked it when women wore saris. So he liked that their heads were covered. This was proper. So it's, a lot of times we make the mistake of looking at something in terms of, so many ways of looking at it. Well, is this good? Why is it good? Why is it bad? The pros and cons. But sometimes that's actually not good because sometimes, excuse me, it's just that you just have to ask, did Prabhupada want us to do this? Did he like this? And so you don't have to discuss all the pros and cons and the culture and the modern adaptation. It's, those considerations are there. But in some cases, it's just, well, did he want us to do it? And he wanted us to do it, so we do it. Like, conversation's over. We don't have to get so mental and philosophical and strategic. Because sometimes it's just, this is what Prabhupada wanted us to do, so we do it. It's like every morning I put on tilak. Tilak. 12 places. Put on tilak in 12 places. Om Keshavaya Namaha. You put tilak on 12 places on your body, protect it, and Krishna will live on your body in different places. And then, you could think, well, Prabhu, you're not doing deity worship, and you're just at home. So what's the big thing? And the Amazon guy comes and delivers, and he looks at you and he thinks you're like war paint on your forehead and you're weird, and blah, 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 blah. And then I think, but Prabhupada likes it. Bhaktisiddhanta likes it. That is the end of the conversation. Yeah, just put on tilak. They like it. That's all. Not like, should we, shouldn't we? What if the Amazon guy sees me with tilak and they're going to think all the Hare Krishnas are completely crazy. They wear paint on their forehead. They wear bed sheets. The other consideration is does Prabhupada like this? He likes it, so we put it on. So we put on beautiful tilak. And Prabhupada's very happy. So those are considerations also. Marco says, I heard that in Vedic times women did not cover their heads and that it is wrong to define a Vedic cuisine based on foods that were not used in Vedic times, such as potatoes, for example. Well, I think potatoes were brought apparently by the British because they're so unhealthy. They wanted to curse the Indians for kicking them out of India. Did you know that? Now you know. No offense to the Indians. But I think, Marco, I just answered the question. That, yeah, there could be so many reasons. Head covering isn't a North Indian thing. It's actually a Muslim thing, which affected North India. And, it's true. And in South India, they don't. Different culture. But, you have to ask the question, did Prabhupada like it? If he liked it, then why wouldn't you do it? If it doesn't matter because he never said he liked it or didn't like it, then maybe it's a different discussion. But if Prabhupada likes something, why wouldn't you do it? The discussion is ended. You can save yourself years of research. You just find, did Prabhupada like this? Oh, he liked it. Let's do it. I think that's important. Now, we're not applying this to every particular situation, but it's an interesting discussion because part of the discussion entails, well, what do other people think about us if we do this? And sometimes that is a very valid thing to consider because we don't want to turn people off. And sometimes it's not because there are certain things that Prabhupada just said, no, we have to do this. So now you don't have a choice. People like it, they don't like it. We have to do it, And as far as cooking, there's certain things Krishna likes. But as far as cooking for the public and preaching, There may be adjustments there. So Jyotirmayi says, as far as I know, from a very advanced woman devotee that lives in Mayapur, she comes from a Brahminic family of South India. She told me that in South India, if you cover your hair, your mother can even slap you. That is never allowed. Yeah, South India. And the South Indians are much more traditional, yeah. So, it seems to me it's coming from the Muslim culture that infiltrated into northern India. But if all the women were doing it and Prabhupada didn't want them to do it, he would have said, why are you covering your hair? You shouldn't cover your head. It's not proper. So, now, did the gopis cover their hair? That's the question. Or, well, women don't go bald, but if they did, that would solve that problem. There's no hair to cover. Or, like Sydney, just shave it off. No hair to cover. That will solve the discussion. Okay, ladies, just shave your head, and we can finish this discussion. Go on to something else. Okay. Vedanta Maharaj said sometimes devotees shave their heads, and sometimes Krishna shaves their head for them. Yeah, Krishna shaved my head. I have my joke. Prabhupada actually touched me on the head. I think when I was initiated, or even before that, yeah. Prabhupada would come out of the temple, and we would line up on two sides, and Prabhupada would walk in the middle, and as Prabhupada would come, we would pay obeisances. And then he would touch heads. Sometimes he missed somebody's head. Then you would bow down, you get to touch his feet, and he would touch the head. Isn't that cool? Did you know that? Two lines, and we're lined up like this, and then Prabhupada's walking through the middle. And then as he walks, we just all bow down, touch his feet. Wow, is that amazing? And then he touches our head. What more could you ask for? So I always joke, say, well, I met my spiritual master. I paid obeisances. He touched my head. All my hair fell out. And I thought, well, I might as well become a monk because I can't grow my hair anymore. And here I am. That's my story. But, yeah. Deepak says, I've heard covering your head is also covering your ego. It seems like now in ISKCON, nobody's going to be given a hard time for covering their head, and no one's going to be given a hard time for not covering their head. But I think there was a time in ISKCON you would definitely be given a hard time if you didn't cover your head. Like, what's wrong? You don't cover your head. You're a woman's liber. This one Ritvik criticized me because my wife's Facebook picture doesn't have her with her head covered. He said, look at his wife, she's a big feminist. She doesn't. So, from the ultra-conservative point of view, if you don't cover your head, it definitely means you're a feminist. Equal rights for women. We don't want equal rights. We want to subdue the men. We want more rights. So that's part of the Welcome to the Material World pamphlet. And you come to the material world, you will, if you ever take birth in the body of a woman, you will have a hard time with a lot of men who would try to put you down. Yeah. Somebody want to write that pamphlet, Welcome to the Material World? These are the conditions. It would be interesting, right? So, to cover your head or not to cover your head? That is the question. How to release that emotional hurt? I came to the resolution intellectually, but emotionally I'm a little stuck. The emotional hurt of, well, it's a tough question because I don't know specifically what you're talking about. But one general principle, well, it depends on what it is. And it depends how deep the hurt is, If the hurt is really, really deep, it may require some therapy or hypnotherapy or something to go in there. If it's like trauma. But if it's just kind of like a normal emotional hurt, it's all evolves around your story of what you are telling yourself happened. And if you can change the meaning of what happened, you can change the emotional response. That's a short answer because I don't know the detail. So, Radhapriya is asking, according with the course that you're doing, the virtual association also affects. It does, but all of us who are helping me in the course, we're feeling that it's it's it doesn't translate well over Zoom. Like you don't feel the people. Like I'm giving the class and I'm saying things and I'm getting a response which is different than when I would say it live. We're not feeling. And we could all see that and say, this is so much different than when we're personally present. It's like we're not feeling one another very much. But the digital association, still, you're seeing the devotee and you're hearing a devotee. But the feeling is, it doesn't transmit so well over Zoom. That's my experience. But the sound vibration is the same, and that's the most important. So the explanation is a little up. So I have to go up. I maybe missed it, or I read it and many years with the wrong devotees thinking I have to because I don't have any other choice and I love them, but the problem was they didn't reciprocate. Oh, yeah. Um, I think you could also say that expectations and needs that you had, they couldn't fulfill. Not necessarily their fault, but it's like Siddha Yogini. I'm very vata, and so the Ayurvedic doctor said, don't eat raw vegetables, right? So, I do better eating cooked food. And then you invite me to your house and you make this amazing raw salad and you're like so excited to feed me a raw salad because you know that I just eat very, very healthy. And I look at the salad, I'm like, I don't say anything because I don't want to hurt you. And I'm like, uh. So, expectations. Now I'm upset. So you didn't do anything wrong. It's just my needs are different. I can't eat raw salad. It's not healthy. And then the rest of the day I'm burping because of the raw salad. That's what happens if I eat raw, I burp. Unless I'm really, really hungry. If I'm starving, I could eat rocks and digest them. But normally, it's hard for me to digest it. So, we all have needs and some people don't fulfill those needs. And we all have a nature and some people are of a different nature. So it's not necessarily their fault. It's just we have certain needs. And so I think that's important. It's like, I don't like beets. I don't know why I don't like them, but we all really like certain foods and don't like other foods and don't like at all certain foods. And there's no real reason generally. And maybe you had some experience with that food and it got you sick, but generally it's just I don't like the taste. I don't know why. It's just not appealing. So sometimes it's like that with association. The person is fine, they're nice, and everything is great, but I just don't like them. I mean, it's not that I don't like them, but it's not my type. You see that when men and women are thinking about getting married, and they'll meet someone, and that person's like really nice, and they're really interested in you, and you're not interested in them. It's just like, yeah, you're nice and everything, but I just think I don't know. I just don't relate to you. You're a nice person, but I'm not like that. So it's not their fault. So I think we have to see that also. I'm a certain way. I have certain needs. This person can't fulfill those needs. I have expectations. They didn't meet them. That's why I don't like them, and that's why I feel hurt. Maybe I feel betrayed, but maybe they didn't really betray me. Maybe I feel they let me down, but maybe they really didn't. It was just what I was expecting. Maybe I feel that they're unkind, but maybe I was just expecting kindness that's you can't really expect from people, or at least from this person. So that's something. Does that? Let me know if that helps. So I skipped a question of Krishna Karshani's. Let's go back. we have this rasa. I always skip her question. Victoria, I skipped a question also. Okay. Let me just... so here's Krishna Karshan's question. We skip some. I have doubts. If going into a relationship because of a lack of other association with devotees we don't like makes sense, we may end up offending this person because we don't have the same vibes. Well, my point was not that you're getting married, but we just have to understand that we are reflecting the qualities of people around us, and we're social beings, so we need association. And you will become like those people. There's a saying, show me your friends and I can predict your future. Show me your friends and I'll know what you're like. I don't even have to know you. Just show me your friends and I'll know what you're like. So that's the point. Sometimes you may not have the best association, but any association, even if it's not like ultimately desirable for you, is important. And you can learn to appreciate it, at least on the level that, well, they're devotees, they're sincere, and I can benefit. That was my point. It was like a if or. And Victoria says, how can we protect honor of ISKCON? In Lithuania, when someone leaves, they like to go to on TV and speak bad things. That is not true, or just partially true. It becomes a very bad trend. You know, I thought about this. I was thinking about this, Victoria, that we in ISKCON should not treat people in a way that they would ever have to go anywhere and say that I was mistreated. We should not do anything in our movement that anyone would say, oh, look what they're doing, it's not right. That's the ultimate way you solve this problem. And the fact that so many people become devotees, we invite so many people in our movement, and a certain percentage may eventually find that Krishna consciousness is not, it's not what they want to do, or it's too difficult, or it's something that they'll do more on the side. And they know what the Hare Krishna movement is like. They lived in it. They participated in it. So you would just think logically that our movement should be so full of integrity and kindness that when people would come out, even if they didn't, they say, you know, well, it's just not for me. I can't be that strict or whatever. But the devotees are wonderful. The movement's wonderful. I was treated very kindly. Everything, you know, they have high integrity, honesty, and so forth. That's the solution. In lieu of that solution, of course, you could speak to the devotees, or you have to then defend yourself in the public media. But, you know, sometimes we do something wrong. And if we do something wrong, we need to publicly admit it. We did this wrong. It was a mistake. We didn't know, and we made a mistake. So that's also how you deal with it. If you make a mistake and you publicly try to hide it and you're being, you know, it doesn't always work, at least not in America. Okay, it's Friday, so you guys are fired up because you're thinking, oh, we won't have a class tomorrow. Well, we have other classes. So Deepak says, in Gujarat, covering your head is respect for elders. And amongst, like the Kundalini yogis, the Sikhs, everyone covers their head, the men also. You know, if you ever go and watch Yogi Bhajan people doing kirtan, like Snatan Kaur, everyone's got their head covered, even the men. So that's a tradition. Okay. And Vrindavani says, very true. You respect your elders by covering your head. Now, Vrindavani, in Vrindavan, what do you notice? That when the women, do you notice that most of the women cover their head in Vrindavan because it's a more sacred place than you see like in Houston? Well, Siddha Yogini. I realized this year, after so many years, and I am good with that, but I collected so much hurt and cannot have normal relationships. And I would like to have it. Maybe just some patience. Have you done my forgiveness course, Siddha Yogini? There's a section in this course, in the course called Core Hurts. And the Core Hurts section explains why other people upset us. And it's not, some reasons are obvious, They may be abusive. But in normal relationships, why we get upset is not because of what they do as much as because of who we are and what we expect. And so it goes back to emotional needs. So, and if you want to do that course, you just go to my website. It's the Intensive Forgiveness Course. It'll really be good for you. But if not, just send me an email and I'll send you the paper on core hurt and you can read about it. And it's very, very interesting because a lot of times we're upset with people because of who we are as much as who they are, and sometimes not because of who they are, but because of who we are, because of our past, our nature, past samskaras, our conditioning, all of this. And then we don't like somebody because we have certain needs that they can't meet, and that's why we like them. Or we have certain nature. So my point is, maybe you should do that forgiveness course if you have resentment towards these people, because it will heal it. That might be the best thing. Or maybe you've already done it. Have you done it yet? And if you've done it, you can now do it online again. Jyotirmai is giving us some wisdom here, all the way from Greek. Is this Greek wisdom, Jyotirmai, or is this transcendental to Greece? We must always consider that the fox said that the grape was not good only because it couldn't reach it. So it may happen that ex-devotees speak badly because of that. Yeah, that's always true. Yeah, better you do the, go take the actual course because it has all the exercises. Yeah. That's basically that's Trump's mode of, our president, Donald Trump, that's his mode of operandus. He just says somebody's bad, somebody's lying, and it makes it up and then condemns them for doing it. I mean, not always makes it up, but often does, and then you can condemn them because what they did is bad, and you just made it up. Give a dog a bad name and hang it. Why'd you hang the dog? Oh, because he's got rabies and he's biting people. It's not true. But now I have an excuse for it. So yeah, that's there. Krishna Kanta Gopalini. The reason you're supposed to cover your head is because you're so beautiful. And if we see your beautiful hair, we're going to lose our mind and think of you and not think of Krishna. That's the reason. It's a form of modesty also. But, it is also, I mean, we're adapting Krishna. The problem is we're adapting Krishna consciousness to the modern culture. So, things change. This is an interesting discussion, how much we should adapt. Yeah. My Ayurvedic doctor told me it's very good to keep low vata when it's going crazy. Oh, okay. Every time you go crazy, Krishanga, you take your low vata pills, right? Then you're fine. Okay. Don't eat salads then. Drive you crazy. Okay, so we're going to end. I don't know if we made any real conclusion about head covering, but some of you may want to ask a senior woman in our movement about head covering, and if you have any way to correspond with them and ask them. Um, Here in Alachua, I think the main women who cover their head are Prabhupada's disciples or older devotees. I think the older they are, the more chance they cover their head. The younger they are, the less chance. And so I don't know if the Hare Krishna's success depends on whether they cover their head or not. It's interesting discussion. You have and then, okay, you go to the temple, all the women have their head covered and they're wearing saris, and all the men are wearing dhotis and shaved head, and everybody's got tilak, and you invite people in. And can they relate to that? That's a whole other discussion. I have one more, another question from Hemanti. Hemanti, is the desire for wanting acknowledgement for service done leaning towards false prestige? No, it's not leaning towards false prestige at all. It's total false prestige. No leaning. You're right, dead center in the middle. Feels good to be acknowledged for some achievements. Okay, I'm just joking. It depends why you want to be acknowledged. Do you want to be acknowledged because you want to know that devotees are happy? Like you cook prasadam and everyone says, "Hey Monty, that prasadam was amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you." So now you feel like, okay, my service is valuable. It's appreciated. I'm inspired to do it. That's okay. But if you're doing it and thinking, I want to be acknowledged as a good devotee, this makes me feel like I'm better than others, then you're dead center in the middle of false ego. Because the whole idea of false ego is to feel better than others, and the whole idea of Krishna consciousness is to feel lower than others. So being appreciated doesn't necessarily make us feel better. It just makes us feel, oh, I did the right thing, devotees are pleased, and I'm encouraged. So you see the difference there. So Marco's recommending everyone cover their head with holy name. So get a chadar, holy name chadar, like I have, to keep my neck warm because I'm losing my voice, and cover your head with the holy name and everything. Okay, so now we're going to end class with my head covered. Although I can see here in my video, I keep, yes, now I'm covered. How do I look? My head is covered with the holy name. I see my video keeps stopping. Do you see it stopping? Starting and stopping. That's low upload speeds. This is frustrating. I'm so frustrated with the internet. Last comment. Russian devotees always have their hair covered, no matter the age, but they do it also when they go to church. It's their culture, yeah. So a lot depends on culture, yeah. Arab culture also, women cover their head. And Western culture is women don't cover their head with their hair down and comb it. It looks like want to be beautiful. What to do? We don't want to condemn devotees because they don't cover their head. I'm sure there are those who will condemn all of you ladies if you don't cover your head. And when in doubt, ask your guru what to do. The answer is be modest in public. That's the answer. Okay? Yeah. Krishna Kanta got her training where women have to cover their head and those who don't. Yeah, it would, in a temple where every woman covers their head, if you don't, you stand out. Like, what's wrong with Krishna Kanta? She doesn't cover her head. I'm not the best person to talk about head covering. We need to ask a senior devotee. Okay? And of course, if you ask 3 senior devotee women, you will likely get 3 different answers. So that kind of doesn't really solve the problem, does it? Yeah. Okay. We'll end here. Otherwise, we'll be discussing for a day of Brahma about head covering. So do I have your permission to end? And we can celebrate because now I can take breakfast. Class is over. I can take breakfast. Okay. Hare Krishna to all of you. So let me tell you what's happening tomorrow in case you're interested. I have to turn my phone on, then I can tell you. I know something's happening tomorrow and Sunday. What is happening tomorrow? Occasionally I'm doing something in the middle of the day and I don't look at my calendar and I think, I wonder if I missed a class, because sometimes I have so many classes. Okay. We're almost there. We're almost there. Our calendar's coming up. Oh, Krishnangi. 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, we're having a class on japa, but it's also relating to guilt, how you feel when you don't chant japa, right, Krishnangi? Yeah. Yeah, well, Jyotirmaya knows because she's in Italy. So it's, yeah, it's relating to guilt. It's a topic of guilt and japa, especially designed for Catholics. A lot of Catholics in Italy, so we decided, there's a lot of people raised in Catholicism deal with guilt because it's a little bit programmed in, so I understand. Yes. And then on Sunday, 6:30 a.m. my time, there's going to be an initiation, and I will give a lecture on initiation and the 10 offenses. So that is, I think, advertised. Yeah. 2 p.m. for me and 8 p.m. in Italia. You Italians like to stay up late. Okay. Jyotirmaya knows my schedule better than I do. Okay, Jyotirmaya, you should call me up every day before class and say, did you remember? Yeah. I remember to write it down on my calendar, but did you remember to look at your calendar? That's another thing. It's a twofold process. I'm working on the second part. Sometimes I don't do the second part. Okay. Hare Krishna to all of you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Wow, you got 20 minutes extra. You are so lucky today. Go Prema.